Let's go.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to MBA Waves, talking all things business and education. I'm your host for this week, Lucrezia, joined by my fabulous co-hosts, Bara Sapir and Krithika Srinivasan. Today, some spotlight on careers, talking all about consulting, strategy consulting, management consulting. We've got two fantastic guests with us today, Gaurav Bhosle, who is a consulting career coach and ex-McKinsey, and Van Vicente, who is just graduated from Duke. Congratulations, and starting at Bain. Welcome, everybody. How you doing today?
Great.
Very
Good to
nice.
see you all.
Doing good.
Nice. So today on episode 146, we're going to bring the focus on the current trends in consulting, what skills can get you into consulting, and how to leverage your MBA to get into consulting roles. So let's just jump right into it. Listen, guys, the glamour about management consulting never fades. Why do you think that is?
I think it will never will. Yeah. So especially given that our audience is MBAs, right? So coming out of MBA, if you think from a career strategy perspective, consulting is the fabulous career choice, right? So if you want to, for example, right, so from a career strategy perspective, if you want to still not commit to an industry, try out a few consulting, right? If you have an entrepreneurial idea and if you want to get some business knowledge, consulting, or if you want to be an advisor, get into high impact areas, again consulting. So consulting keeps a lot of options open out of MBA, right? And of course, the pay is not bad, yeah. So you'll be able to also pay off your study loans, and that's probably the reason it never loses its glamour.
Yeah, kind of building off of what Gaurav already said. Consulting is like very friendly to people who want to switch careers, because I think a lot of people go into the MBA not exactly sure of what field, like what final field they want to end up at, and consulting lets you kind of get in from any type of career and then like exit out into any type of career that you want. On top of that, I think consulting of all fields is the best that translates experience from the classroom. So like business education, a lot of it is like we do casework. You do case in classes, you do casing in the classroom, you read cases before going to class. And a lot of consulting is like very similarly kind of academic and like doing a lot of research, and building out a lot of materials for clients. And so that experience kind of translates most directly one to one from the things that you pick up during your time doing an MBA.
Hmm.
That's, I really like how it is kind of we like to use this term of Swiss Army knife kind of thing for getting into multiple careers. So the question to you all will be like, what is the current scenario like? Because we know that there has been some shifts happening not only in the world of business, but also definitely in the world of management consulting, especially due to AI and other things happening. So can you speak more about it?
So Van, you want to take it first?
Sure. I think that the first thing to know is that consulting recruiting is like quite resilient. It's, like even through like things like economic downturn or like the pandemic or like shifts in the market that have been happening in the last couple of years, consulting is like a quite resilient career and like always takes in like a very steady stream of people, because consulting always has to think like long term, right? Like, the people that they're recruiting into a class now might actually like become partners in like 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? So they can't just think short term as far as their hiring practices, which is why I think consulting has remained fairly stable and has actually grown in the last like couple of years, even as like the market around it has been slowing down. So I think that consulting remains like a very strong option, especially for people who want to kind of weather any kind of market uncertainty that's happening right now.
Hmm. So I'll take a little bit different cue over here. So I started my consulting career in 2008 January with McKinsey, and that too in Europe. So in the middle of the Lehman crisis, and since then I have seen two, three so-called crisis or semi-crisis. One thing that I've realized is, see, advisory, and you guys would know you are also in advisory industry. Advisory is a discretionary spend. Okay, And whenever the finances are tight, advisors are, they are the first one to get out of it. But at the same time, don't forget when the chips are up, they again come back. Okay, so in consulting as well, right? When the markets are down, you will see little bit subdued hiring. And to be honest, right now, as we speak, the hiring is subdued. It is not as good as what it was probably 2022, okay, or 2019, no doubt about it. But it is slowly picking up, no doubt about it. Again, there would be region-wise differences. So I coach people across 55 countries. Middle East is doing good, no doubt about it. US is sustaining, Europe a little bit down, but that like very obvious like a specific differences. The other change you spoke about AI, but even before I go to AI, the other thing that you will see is the type of hiring. As the revenue pressure is increasing, now the type of profile the consulting companies are hiring are those who can hit the ground running. Yeah, who can get the revenue very fast. So extremely, non-typical profiles which will need grooming, right? They would not be preferred in this kind of scenario. Very extravagant career transition might not happen in next this year or next year. That we need to see. AI has an impact. There's no doubt about it. So AI means that now a lot of basic stuff that consultants do, they are using AI. It is becoming efficient, and because there is an AI now, clients are also challenging consulting companies to get their rates down, and they are saying we can also do ourselves, right? So that is happening. Let's see now. AI impact is very new, so it will still unfold, I would say. But market is a little bit subdued for sure. Hiring is more for people who can add value quickly.
So, Van, you mentioned that getting into consulting, it's a lot like what it's like at school, right?
Yeah.
That there's like a really easy transition. And I'm curious, what other, if we can get into the weeds a little bit more, like what are the other experience or skills for that pre-MBA that's advantageous to get into consulting, especially if it's so difficult to actually land a great position at one of these firms?
Yeah. I think for me, professions that, and like I'm speaking a lot from like my experience of like the people that I see that end up getting consulting offers. I think that the strongest conversions out into consulting are people who have some experience dealing with kind of interpersonal speaking and then relationship management and a lot of like having to like manage a lot of egos in a room, having to lead like a significant number of people, because they look for people who are ready to face in front of a client, because a lot of what consulting is client management, right? So to me, like, that sometimes means like you're a frontline business person, like you work in sales or something, but also it can mean, and this is a very big population of people that end up in consulting from my schools and similar schools, is teachers and veterans are a lot of people who end up in consulting. And the reason why is because for someone like a teacher, right, like you think about all the like kinds of people that a teacher has to manage. They have to manage a bunch of students, which honestly, they have to manage parents and parent relationships and parents' egos. And like one friend that I had at Fuqua actually mentioned that like managing clients was very similar to managing parents, because parents similarly had like very strong opinions about how they want their child to be educated, and clients also had like those kinds of strong opinions. I think in general, consulting really lends itself off to people who are able to like talk very well, whatever that profession is, and like a teacher is an example of that.
GB, do you have anything to add to that about skills and experiences that?
Yeah, so I think having worked on the other side of recruitment and training a little bit, I think there are three pillars of consulting talent or consulting professional, that's strata, right? Which is problem structuring, analytical bent of mind, and top-down communication, right? So generally, those who have background into it, they will have an advantage getting into consulting, and also probably little bit settling down in consulting much faster, right? For example, I think Van gave an example of let's say teachers, right? So probably the from a communication perspective, from a problem solving perspective, though we feel teachers, where are they solving the problem, but don't forget they are solving probably the problem like every day. Yeah. So sometimes all these things do matter. I do feel that people coming from the STEM background, they do have an advantage in the process because of the kind of assessments and the first round interview, the way it happens. There's a math, logical thinking, data processing that is needed. So that is for sure an advantage. Having said that, to Van's original point, this is a career which is tolerant and absorbent for profiles which are completely weird. Right? So I had a colleague in McKinsey who was a Olympic gold medalist in rowing and had absolutely no business education. Last year, I coached somebody who was an opera singer. I've coached 4 or 5 US Marines. So people can literally come from any background and make it into McKinsey BCG. It's not a problem, right? What you need to have are these hardcore, things that I spoke about. Are you a good problem solver? Yeah. Do you think data? Do you think analytical? Yeah. And thirdly, can you actually do top-down communication? If you are able to do that, generally from a good college, you shouldn't have a issue getting into consulting.
Also, like one more kind of point on this matter is that like the firms all look for the same thing, but at the same time, like I think that they're all looking for slightly different profiles. Like the firms have very discrete differences in their hiring practices that you can sometimes tell based on the type of interview that they run, right? Like there's some firms that run extremely analytical interviews, like the people who do like restructuring work, the ones who deal with like bankruptcy. So like there's a tendency that like their cases might be more quant heavy, and that they might be looking for someone with a more robust understanding of finance. And so like I think that's kind of the beauty of it. There's so many firms, and the firms are all looking for a lot of different things. And sometimes one firm isn't for someone, but another firm might be more for them because they fit more with the idea of what a perfect consultant for that firm might be.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Van, sticking with you, maybe you could describe a little bit, your journey from completing your MBA at Duke Fuqua to getting into consulting. Like, what were some of your biggest challenges? What's your story?
Sure. Okay. So when I was applying to Fuqua, and like this might be like kind of not exactly the best advice to give. When I was applying to Fuqua, I did not intend to do consulting. I put in all my applications. I wanted to do tech. I specifically wanted to do tech and media. And I came into school with the idea that I was going to do tech, right? So I literally didn't recruit for consulting at all. I didn't attend like the first info sessions. I didn't do that pre-MBA programming at all. Which, by the way, if you're recruiting for consulting, you should do. But because of that, I started the process really late. And the only reason I kind of got into consulting was because I really liked the idea of a case interview, which it's sometimes kind of an anomaly. There's people who hate case interviewing and like just want to get done with it. I really enjoyed the process because I think it kind of tickled a part of my brain that enjoyed like kind of the problem solving aspect and the analytical aspect that Gaurav was talking about. And so when I kind of went through that process, I was recruiting for, I had in mind, I was like, okay, like I'm going to recruit for a small number of firms. I only recruited for 5 firms. And I'm going to try this right now. And then I will like try to rebound into a different profession if like nothing in consulting works out. That's, I started super late. Like the first people that I talked to from the firms were all like, hey, like Van, like why haven't we talked to you before? We've already talked to all of your friends who are recruiting for the New York office. I'm like, well, shoot. But I think that the beauty of consulting is that first, it's like extremely structured as a recruiting process, which means that everyone who goes to an MBA program, at least in the US, right? The process is you go into school, and then for the first like 4 months, you're entirely devoted to like a structured recruiting process with consulting. It consumes a lot of your time and a lot of your energy. But if you're able to do it, then like that kind of gives you a lot of like job security for the last year and a half of your experience, right? And so I ended up with 2 consulting offers. I ended up picking Bain. I did my summer internship and fortunately got a return offer. Um, and I really enjoyed like my summer with the firm. Like it was like a really like it was exactly what I thought it would be. In terms of like the kinds of things I would get to do, the kind of people that were in the firm. And like I think it really like spun positive because like I went into the internship with kind of an open mind of like, okay, if I enjoy this thing, like that's good. If I don't enjoy it, there's always second year to recruit again. But I like enjoyed it a lot. And I found I think it was honestly like the most fun job I've ever had. And I'm super looking forward to doing it again.
Nice.
So, GB, I know that you had a slightly different path to McKinsey. Do you want to quickly share about, especially in Europe? Yeah.
So I came from a technology background, and unlike Van, I was hell bent on getting into consulting, and I needed nothing else than McKinsey. So much so that my classmates used to tease me by the name of McKinsey. I was so crazy about it. But my problem was very different. My problem was I was probably the least attractive candidate for them, right? So I had an Indian passport. I couldn't speak any other language than English. I'm probably an Indian one, and all the other problems that come up with it, right? So. So I actually I started with internship as well, and I still feel now that I coach people, I always tell them that the best and easiest way of getting into consulting is through internships, because the processes are significantly less complicated, and plus in IB, investment banking and consulting, the conversion rate of internship to full time is very high. Because they don't want to invest so much time again in interviewing somebody, because in consulting, interview process is very expensive. Anyways, so basically I had to I did not get any internship. I got just 50 applications, 50 rejections, and then I realized that I need to build my profile. It's no more kind of going to be cakewalk. I did 2 internship, one in corporate strategy and one in investment banking in M&A. So I had two European employers on my CV hiring me for pretty good strategy roles, right? And then I had to really hunt for offices, because see, in US and also in, let's say, in India or Korea, some countries, there's a very structured hiring process, which is not the case in Europe per se. In Europe, it's very networking based recruitment that happens. And that's why I had to do a lot of networking, meet a lot of different people, somehow secure an interview call. And that is where, so I don't want to take too much time of that, but I actually could figure out in networking that Germany office works a lot with an Asian offices, and they are open to have kind of Asian consultants for their offices. And I did apply, and I cracked it. So I had McKinsey offer, I had BCG offer, and a few others. I ended up joining McKinsey in Frankfurt.
Can you, both of you, talk a little bit about how you can use the MBA itself to pivot and prepare for the consulting positions?
Go ahead, Van. You have a fresh experience.
Sure. Okay. So I think that a lot of the MBA experience is kind of custom built to get you a job in the consulting. And like I know that sounds like, like there's a lot of other professions that come out of an MBA, but I think there's a reason why consulting is like, if you look at every employment report, that's always number 1 or 2. It's the resources on campus, at least in the US, are like very robustly designed and hyper structured around getting you a consulting offer, right? So normally your consulting club inside of your school will run like multiple sessions preparing you for case interviews and behaviorals. And then every firm will come to school, right? They'll come to school and they'll, like have informational sessions, and they will organize coffee chats. some schools have an on-campus recruiter that you can use as a resource to connect with people from your desired office. And then so typically like you know all of these resources are provided for you as soon as you enter school, and you're kind of just able to leverage them into getting the kind of offer that you want. That's not to say that like there's no networking component. There is a lot of networking that comes with consulting recruiting. You have to have, not only do you need to like kind of impress upon people who are in the firm, but you also need to have a very robust knowledge of what makes the firm good in order to like excel in your behavioral interviews, right? And so they need to know you, and you need to know the firm very well. But I think that the MBA in the States is a very like sandbox environment for you to excel at that, because like they kind of you basically have like your calendar of the things that you want to do in order to get towards an offer built out for you. And the alumni are like very, very helpful in that sense, because they will like they will fly down and visit, they will like show up to informational sessions, and the firms like they invest a lot of resources into recruiting, like like even the idea of having an on-campus recruiter, like that's a full-time person whose entire job is getting people from their school into the firm. And so like a lot of those resources are with the idea that they want like a constant pipeline of people coming into the firm from your school, right? I think that the downside of all of this is that like it's really hard to recruit in full time if you decide that you want to do consulting later, or if like you don't get an internship in consulting, because the full time resources are very limited. And again, like the vast majority of people who end up with a consulting offer do an internship, because I think at least of the schools I've seen, it's like something like 80 to 90% of all consulting offers come from an internship, and then there's like a small there's a small allowance for after the internship season is done. But regardless, I think that an MBA sets you up extremely well to do consulting recruiting.
You're up.
I think, I wouldn't even use the word pivot. MBA to consulting, I think, is not a difficult transition. Yeah. So if you're coming from technology, and if you want to go get into fashion, or come from finance and you are getting into operations because of MBA, then it's a pivot. Yeah, wherein you really have to do something. Consulting is a feed. MBA is a feeder course for consulting. Yeah. If you look at the annual hiring of any consulting company, 60-65% is MBAs. Yeah, so both have like aligned incentives. Yeah, what Van is talking about, consulting companies are completely business oriented. They are not doing any favor by doing what he's telling us that they are doing, right? They are doing it because they want people out of it at the bottom of the pyramid. Because if they have MBAs, then a lot of basic skills, right, are already taken care of. The basic understanding of different industries, how to do things in a project-based environment, in tight timeline, and those basic things, polished communication, all these things you get like half-baked pudding, right, already, right? So of course they would invest into that. So I think I don't think it's even a pivot. If you want to get into consulting, of course it's the other angle is it's competitive, because it's like there are a lot of people who are going for it. It has become competitive. Otherwise, I don't think it's a pivot per se. If you utilize all your resources, now a lot of things that Van is talking about is from a US MBA, just 2-year MBA. If you look at any other MBAs, right, which are 1-year MBAs, 16 months MBA, the situation is a little bit different, right? So since last 2-3 years, I think we have spoken about it, Krithika and Eric, that so many people are coming to me to prepare them for case interviews even before they start MBA, right? Especially people who are going for European MBAs or any 1-year MBA like in Seattle. Because once you are getting into that MBA grunt, and those MBAs don't even have internships, or even if they have, they're very small. They don't get time. So if you allocate your time, if you really prepare for it, then MBA to consulting is not very difficult. And if you choose your MBA correctly, if you are, it has to be I mean, go to any consulting company and in their recruitment, just check the drop down and look at their preferred schools. And if you are coming from any one of them, then it's not difficult. If you are not, then just like MBA applications, not just the GMAT is one thing, it is an overall profile. Same with MBA. So same with consulting. If you are not with a preferred school, then you have to look at other achievements and how you can actually build it. So that becomes a little bit of extra effort.
Thanks, Gaurav. You're a really good person to ask this to. What's some advice you would give, or some of the biggest challenges, let's say, that could be faced by somebody that's not coming from a STEM background, or who's coming from, let's say, a non-traditional background? What are some of the biggest challenges you foresee, and maybe some advice you would give?
So I think challenges will, at least I see, because I come from a career transition coaching background, challenges come in the clarity part, preparation part, and also settling down part. They're everywhere, right? Because I don't consider getting into McKinsey BCG Bain as a success. I say that if you spend 18 months or 2 years at the firm, then you are success. So for a lot of non-STEM or non-typical background, first of all, what the biggest challenge that I see is for them to envision and understand what exactly consulting is and what is the day-to-day life of a consultant, right? And I think Van spoke about an amazing point, right? That though he did not consider consulting as first option, but one first trigger was he enjoyed case cracking. And I also tell people the same thing. If you enjoy case cracking, then only go forward. Otherwise, let's stop preparation. If you can't do it for 40 minutes, you can't do it like every day and at 2 a.m. In the morning, right? You have to do it. You will not be able to do it, right? So a lot of these things, the STEM, non-STEM background people, we make them realize much earlier. So we have some psychometrics, we have skill assessments that we use, and then in the preparation as well, they need to go a little bit extra, to be very honest. So especially on the case interview side, yeah. So there are a lot of different drills that we employ depending on where the person is lacking, and this is all it's so funny, but non-STEM background person, it's such a stereotypical terminology, because we are assuming that person chose that career with full knowledge of himself. I have seen people coming from art background, but they have amazing math and they are super structured thinker. Yeah. And I have seen people who are coming from math background and amazing creative thinker, but no structured thinking. So people have it in them. We need to surface it. And third part is once they join, because that is another problem, because consulting is an ecosystem that you need to really understand. The things work in a particular way. So you need to really prepare for consulting job as well. Don't just stop at preparing for consulting interview, especially people who are not coming from the typical management background or STEM background. I tell them to certain tools that we need to grasp, knowledge of some of the processes, how things work, right? And certain soft skills, those things we work on.
Thanks, Gaurav. Van, you're a lot newer. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I think that my sense is that being from a STEM background is beneficial in some ways, right? Like it's beneficial in the analytics part and kind of capturing data quickly, and being able to see a table and be okay, I actually know how to clear this and process this. But at the same time, I think that other careers also have inherent advantages to them, which is what kind of I was mentioning earlier, a teacher being able to having an understanding of how to solve problems and manage relationships and deliver insights in a very clear way, because they literally say things with the intention of having someone else learn them. And so I think that being in STEM is beneficial maybe from a process perspective, but I'm not sure that it's inherently beneficial from a casing perspective, right? And so I think that's the beauty of being able to transition into consulting, is it's just so inherently friendly that like people who might not have the most like businessy sounding backgrounds or like engineering-y sounding backgrounds, but are still able to like, you know, prove themselves as like an effective business person.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I love how you're all emphasizing on the so-called soft skills to be also as important, and I'm sure that MBA is one of the, one of the pillars is to help you get better at data interpretation, analytics, and other things. So, coming to a little bit more about the interview prep and the case interviews that you said, how important are they? And we all know that consulting is probably one of the few industries that still relies on a GMAT score. So is that still applicable?
So as far as like if I think Gaurav will back this up, the casing process is the single most important part of the entire thing. It is like indisputably extremely important, and you have to be like extremely prepared to do them. Because they will just like throw random curveballs at you. Like you will like like, you know, and like people need to like do like a very rigorous preparation in order to like excel at the case interview. Like I think that's straightforward. As far as GMAT, I you know, maybe Gaurav has like a better idea on this, but I'm of the mind that like, you know, as more schools become more test optional, and because like I think the case prep process already has so much like analytical rigor built into it, that your GMAT scores become less and less important. And I know people who were test optional, didn't even care, didn't even like have a good score, didn't even submit their score because they were like, it's not that great of a score, who still ended up getting interviews and offers over people who, you know, had like a 770. I don't think that it's that like extremely important in the process. And I don't really see like, maybe you've seen something else, but I don't see an extremely strong correlation between those things.
Yeah, that aligns with what I've been hearing as well, exactly as you said, because of the test optional situation, which was definitely accelerated since COVID.
So see, I feel no, it's different. It is very different in very different market, guys, because it's ultimately demand supply. Yeah. Out of 1,000 people that apply to MBB, they generally give offer to 10 to 20. Yeah, which is a huge filtering that they need to do, and it's expensive. Yeah, and as a result, they need to employ certain filters, fortunately or unfortunately. To be very honest, in the back end, if you see the criteria that basically rests on all these things is ability to set and achieve challenging goals. That is what we want to see in the profile. Now, does GMAT is an achievement or challenging goal? We don't know. Is GPA is a challenging goal? We don't know. Yeah, probably somebody has done a very tough startup can be much tougher than GPA. However, you know, in some cases, for example, in India, right, when we do recruitment, right, there's so many people applying, and the filtering needs to be done, you know, such rigorously till we go to the point and go and every application and at least some kind of assessment, right? That the initial filter needs to be applied. Same with let's say INSEAD. Same with let's say Harvard. The batches are so big and so many people apply that filtering needs to be done. Sometimes it can be. I agree with him that GMAT, GPAs, those things are reducing in importance, but I don't think they have gone away, right?
No.
Because it's a human, it's a process efficiency thing, and unfortunately, it needs to be done somehow.
It's not that GMAT has gone out of usefulness. It's just that there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to assess these skills or filter a large applicant pool. So I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that, you know, it may not be only we are looking at MBB. A lot of them probably don't know that there are other consulting firms, and this is something that we keep mentioning multiple times, that you could probably get into a so-called smaller firm, but then make your way up. So, can you guys speak a little bit more to it?
I'm of the belief that that other firms are absolutely excellent, and like people, as like a general rule, right? Like I think there's like an aggressive overemphasis on getting into MBB when you get into school, But I think that if you look at the list of other firms and the things that they do well, like you'll find other firms that are like excellent and that set you up for your goals and that sometimes are similarly competitive to MBB, right? Like you look at a firm like LEK, which is like, a leader in private equity, does basically as much private equity work as someone like Bain. And like they're like one of the trusted partners of every private equity firm in the world. You look at a firm like Alex Partners, which does like, phenomenal restructuring. The pay scale is even higher than MBB sometimes. It's like, I think that people generally, when they come into the MBA, need to keep their options open. And like, because all of these firms lead to like exceptional exit ops, and have like fantastic experiences and work with amazing companies. And so like, it's not so much that like, that they're all the same, but more that, with the way that like not everyone is gonna get, the firm that they really want. And so like I think going into the program, like it just makes sense to keep your options open, right? And not like hone in so hard on like one specific firm.
I think one point is exactly what Van was saying is the demand supply, and whether you should put your eggs in one bucket or you should diversify your risk. And I always talk about if you want to be in consulting, then not just strategy consulting companies, but your internal consulting companies or something like Siemens, Adventa, Porsche Consulting. They are excellent and they do an amazing job, better than some of the strategy consulting companies. Plus, there are corporate strategy rules and chief of staff rules, which can give you amazing exposure, even better than them. I just had a Kuchi who chose a pharma chief of staff role over BCG offer. Yeah, so so that's not the point. The point is, what's your career strategy? What do you want out of consulting? If you are very clear about it, then you can make choices. Just like in MBA admissions, I used to say that everybody has different Harvard. Yeah. Like that, everybody has different McKinsey or BCG Bain, if you are very clear about it. For example, if you want to be in developmental consulting, I mean, Dalberg is a better consulting company for you to go than McKinsey, hands down, right? Or if you are getting into turnaround restructuring, then Alvarez and Marcel, or I mean, that just I can talk about it for hours. So, point is that that is the specificity. What generally people do, is like they want that in that best or glory, right? So why Wimbledon is considered the best tennis tournament, why Harvard is considered the best, just like that, right? And there is some merit to it because bigger consulting companies come up with a much richer alumni support throughout your life, much stronger brand in some industries, etc. Yeah. And as a result, of course, they are there for a long time. So there is that effect as well. But of course, having said that, if you choose any of the top 50 consulting companies, the work is going to be amazing, and of course, with a little bit of difference. You need to pick and choose, as Van was talking about. You need to go a little bit deeper, do networking, and understand what is that firm doing, and probably not even at a firm level, at an office level. Because what Bain Middle East versus Bain Amsterdam versus Bain New York, right? Even the reputation perspective, it is very different, to be very honest. Yeah. Even the quality of the work is very different. You need to go at that level and choose. Yeah. And there are people who do that. So there are a lot of options available if you are looking for a broader options or a very specific options related to your career strategy.
That makes sense. Van, you had said something interesting about the behavioral interview, and I'm wondering if you could just say a little bit more about that. Like, what is the behavioral interview, and whether or not there's courses or pathways in the MBA program that you would recommend people to take to help with that part of that, or if there's other courses that you think are valuable for students to take in business school.
See, this is the interesting thing, right? Like it's for US MBAs at least, the process of recruiting is located in such a weird place where by the time that you're talking with the firms and getting interviews, you've barely completed like one class, right? So like, because like, for example, you enter in like September or August, and then by the time it's December, that's when you get your offer, like December or early January. And like, by the time that you got the interview offers and stuff, like you will not have even like finished your coursework yet. And so like that's it happens in like a weird concurrent sense. I think so, and in the case of some schools, right, like a lot of schools have like a core curriculum, which means that you don't even get to pick your classes at the beginning. Like, that being said, I think generally that the coursework that helps the best is coursework that forces you to be in teams, like that forces you to like work on group projects together, and courses that focus on the way that you communicate in a business perspective, right? Like a lot of schools have like a business communications course, or like presenting 101, or like, you know, like how to do interviews, how to do behaviorals, and like all of this helps. On top of that, I think that the prep that you do to get into an MBA, like, you know, we do essays, but we also do a lot of interviews. I think all of that is also like a very helpful training ground, because like the thing is, like, the MBA acts as an initial filter for the firms, right? Like, you know, like what Gaurav mentioned, like, you know, they invest resources because they know that the people who go to these schools are good, right? And so like it works as kind of this initial screener already, where it's like, oh, like we don't have to get like all 20,000 people that apply to business school. We just have to get the 1,000 people that got in, that want to go to consulting, right? And so like I think that generally, like, that process, even before you do your MBA, is like already very helpful.
That makes sense. I mean, the teamwork, I would imagine, is very parallel to what you're doing in the consulting sort of ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about GB? How about you? Are there any courses or pathways that you feel are valuable for you?
Not from a PEI perspective, or sorry, from a fit perspective, but generally from a consulting interview perspective. Again, in case you are coming from a non-STEM background or non-business background, I think having core subject knowledge of a few of the basics like strategy, finance, operations, HR, supply chain, that is very, very important. I think so that the basics of the business pillars are covered. And of course, I think see, now this is so different for different people, right? So if you have come from if you are entering an MBA with a role or pre-MBA role, which is predominantly the single contributor role, individual contributor role, then yes, a lot of team kind of subjects or processes where you get an exposed to team is very, very important, no doubt about it. But if you have already been managing teams, right, then probably what you need to be focusing on the delivery aspect of very top-down way of communicating, and kind of putting together the right stories for your consulting process. Okay. Yeah, because what generally ends up happening, when we are talking about fit interviews, the preference is given to stories coming out of your work experience and more than academics. So the equation is professional, if not professional, academic, if not academic, then personal. That's the hierarchy. Why? Very simply, because in professional environment you are under the right environment, and if you have performed there, that story I am able to relate much more than you working with your classmates, because however competitive the class is, right, still it's a low risk environment, and the personal becomes another different story altogether, right? So that's why we prefer fit stories out of a professional life. Yeah. So that's how I think about it.
Makes sense.
If I may, we opened this episode talking about the glamour of consulting. It's attractive to a lot of people. It's a lot of M's going on here. Everyone wants their MBA. Everyone wants to go to an M7. Everyone wants to work an MBB. So, like, besides the M's and all the sexiness and glamour, brass tacks, besides the long work hours, that's obvious. But, like, what are some of the pitfalls of consulting?
Van, you want to
I don't think consulting is a profession for everyone necessarily. I think that there's people who are better served by going directly to client, as we would call it. Like okay, like Gaurav mentioned this earlier, but there's like internal strategy roles that exist, or like sometimes someone will go into an internal strategy role because they didn't get consulting. After a couple of years, they get promoted, and then they basically have the job that people who are in consulting want to exit out to, right? And so like that's kind of like the irony of it all. Like I think that consulting, like its general biggest pitfall is that if you don't want what do they call this, if you don't want like this highly academic, because consulting is extremely academic as a profession, right? Like there's all this like knowledge bases and research and like making PowerPoints like you're in school. And so like if you don't want to basically be doing school all over again, in a sense, like you don't want like this highly academic, highly like and you want to be more focused on execution, I genuinely think that another career might be better suited for you. I think on top of that, the people who end up very dissatisfied with consulting, I think generally fit. Uh, I think that the people who feel kind of dissatisfied with consulting generally are people who did it because they just thought that it would be like the best thing for their like resume, but they didn't actually have any interest in the career. Which is, I think, a very common thing that happens when you're in business school and like, there's like 200 people who are recruiting consulting with you, and you're like, oh, like yeah, sure, I'll do this thing because like everyone else is doing it, and I don't want to be unemployed. But it takes a lot of work, and then when you're actually there, it's a lot of work to do the job. So I would kind of caution people with like being very sure that this is the career that you even want, and that you want the long hours, and that you want like being beholden to a client, and you want to like constantly be shifting context over and over again. Because if that's not the thing that you want, then like I would just not do it.
Well, why did you want it?
Like like the things that I was looking for in a job, consulting kind of perfectly fit them, like personally, right? Like I wanted a job that had a lot of problem solving. I wanted a job where I was kind of being constantly stimulated, which is good because in consulting you're shifting projects constantly. And I wanted a job filled with like very smart, interesting people that like would challenge me, and that would make me feel a little bit dumb sometimes in like a good way. And I think consulting is like kind of fits that bill, but there's people who definitely would not like that in a job, right? So
for sure. And like you say that maybe a lot of people might choose this profession for the wrong reasons and end up being unhappy or just overwhelmed. But also consulting is a great like stepping stone for when you really know what you want, and you get to test the waters in a lot of different industries, and it helps you learn about what you want, what you don't want. Gaurav,
for sure.
Pitfalls.
So I'll just one thing I'll say on what Van said, right? Because we spoke about consulting being academic multiple times. Just wanted to kind of give one perspective here. Consulting has evolved tremendously. Yeah, gone are the days when they used to throw a report on the face of the CEO and go away. Yeah, from there, consulting has moved where consultant not only do strategy, they also do implementation. Yeah, which is I call consulting 2.0. And now it has evolved, and now they not only do implementation but also do capability development. So they not only suggest you strategy, they tell you how to implement, and they also implement with you, and they also teach you how to strategize. Right. So now the things have changed because clients have changed. Clients have realized that consultants need to be much more with us. So the being hands-on, right? That element is increasing every day in consulting, and this is the right journey in my mind. Yeah. So that is one point. However, having said that, some of the things where I think consulting is something that you might not like or might not serve you well. One is if you have a bottom line orientation. So if you want bottom line responsibility of something, right? If you want to run the P&L, if you want that, what can I say? That dope. Yeah. If you want that feeling of running a P&L, then consulting wouldn't give you. It's advisory ultimately. Yeah. you advise and you go away. One. Secondly, process orientation. It's a extremely process oriented industry or a career for a reason, because otherwise there will be a completely madness, right? So that there has to be a method in the madness. We are talking about extremely intelligent, extremely capable people working on very, very fuzzy things together. So process has to be there. But if you don't like process, then it's a problem. One. Second. Third, it's much talked about, which is analysis paralysis. Spend a lot of time in consulting, and generally then you also sometimes feel that for every decision you need data to back it. Yeah. So in fact, I faced it when I moved from consulting to entrepreneurship. Right. Everywhere to take a decision, yeah, I needed a logic, I needed the data. Right. That is third one. Fourth, I used to say, but now I don't say it, which is depth versus breadth. There are people who are completely depth oriented, right? Not like one project telecom, one finance, one operations, one strategy. They want to go really deep. So for them, I used to say consulting is not for them. But of course, as we know, subject matter expert career track has evolved over the last 10, 15 years. And as a result of that, if you really want to do consulting and you want to be depth oriented, then you can join a particular practice area, be it an industry practice or a functional practice, and still be in consulting. Okay. But yeah, the bottom line responsibility, process orientation, and the data dependence. These are the three things that I can call consulting pitfalls, probably. Yeah.
Maybe we have
Yeah,
time
thank-
for one more
thanks.
question. Would you like to ask it? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks so much for the reality check. A lot of our prospectives are definitely going to write consulting as one of the top choices, and I hope that they also use this to align with your work values. I had one question that came up when you were all speaking, which is now that we ended on the pitfalls, I want you to share like probably a time when you felt you were at your consulting best, so that prospectives will also know about like what is this kind of professional fit that you were talking about a little bit. So in both of your cases, what were sometimes where when you were at your consulting best and you really enjoyed the job?
Okay, so I would rather than talking about one project, yeah, I would like to talk about probably that journey itself, or the aspect of journey which I think I enjoyed the most, being a consultant, which is, to me, it's diversity, the breadth. Yeah, so I got a chance to work in almost 25 different countries. My first project was for a new private equity due diligence for a cement company. Then I was consulting a prime minister of a European country. Then I went to Italy to save a bank in a Lehman crisis. Then Mauritius I was talking about. So the diversity of 8, 10 different industries and different countries, yeah, that is something that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. Yeah, and that I think is something that I would say the greatest value add. And of course, with diversity comes the sharpening of consulting toolkit, the problem solving mindset, etc., which serves you well, I think, throughout the life, and of course the network of consulting companies.
Well, how about you in your
Yeah.
summer internship?
I mean, yeah, I was only a consultant for 3 months, so I have like a very limited pool of experiences to draw from. I think that mine was, and this is gonna sound like kind of small and strange, but when I was doing, it was like week 3 of my internship or something, and I had already been staffed on the project, and I really liked my project. The client was cool, but I remember like there was like a moment like by that point all they were making me do is like like move stuff around on the PowerPoint, and then like, hey, like, can you read this stuff, get up to speed, whatever. And then they were like, hey Van, like, come on, let's go to the conference room, we're just gonna whiteboard. I was like, we're gonna whiteboard, what does that mean? So like we go inside, and then whiteboarding essentially just means we have a problem, and then we're gonna like draw this out and visualize it until we can figure out a solution to the problem. And then we like use like lines and shapes and whatever to like like visualize like where data points are connected, like where we plug in our input, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, hey man, like take the whiteboard marker, like do this thing for us. And so like I was using the whiteboard marker and I was like drawing all these lines. And then my boss, my manager for the summer looks at me. He's like, hey, like you have like a really big smile on your face. I was like, yeah, like this is great. And he was like, is this exactly what you thought consulting would be like? I was like, this is exactly what I thought it would be like. And so like I think that was where like I achieved like, oh my gosh, like this is the great job for me. Like because like I felt like I felt like it was like it was a compressed look into like the kind of bigger picture of consulting, right? Because like, this is like a small like problem fixing session, but like the impact of the things that we're writing on the whiteboard could be like millions of dollars, potentially even billions of dollars in impact. And so like so I think that the intimacy of problem solving combined with the scale of the things that you do things at, I think that was the moment that I realized consulting was like kind of the perfect career for me.
Wow, that's like one of the best definitions I've heard. So I would say that all prospectors should get a whiteboard today.
And also, thanks for like painting a real like clear picture of like what it's like in the moment. Helps people visualize what the day to day can be. At least what you're doing. Cool.
Absolutely.
So we have like 2 minutes left. Any other questions you guys want to ask? Anything you want to share? Impart your wisdom, warnings. Go back. All right. Well, if that's the case, we're going to wrap it up there. I want to thank both of our guests who were fantastic. Learned a lot today. Really interesting. Van, Gaurav, of course, my co-host, Bara, and Krithika. Guys, to stay on top of next week and all future episodes, go to mbawaves.com, streaming live every week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. See you next week. Same time, same place. Bye, everyone.